he was willing to let her go. So, I mean, he didn't have the New Testament to read, but it should have been apparent to him, and it should be to everybody. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You know, at this time, I don't think she's that old. I think she's younger because they have Hagar and then Ishmael, and Ishmael gets to a certain age, and she's, I think, 90-something at the time. So she's probably in her 70s or in that area. But she's an older lady, but she's still... and I think I did that. I may have it written down how old she was at this time because I may have gone back because I had the same question. You know, she's a good-looking lady, but she's older, and I was thinking 90 or 100 or something, but she's actually a little bit younger. And I went through all these dates one time, and I may have it somewhere, but I don't have it in this Bible. So anyway, go ahead and keep reading.
He treated Abram well for her sake, and Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, men servants and maid servants, and camels. But the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife Sarai. So Pharaoh summoned Abram. "What have you done to me?" He said, "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say, 'She is my sister,' so that I took her to be my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go." Then Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had.
Okay, so real quickly, this one does not say, he does this again later with, what's the guy's name? Abimelech, I believe. Anyway, he does this again later, and his son does exactly the same thing. But it doesn't say here that Pharaoh didn't have any contact with her. It doesn't say he did. It just simply says that Abraham got rich off of it. So it could be that actually something happened. You know, he took her as a wife and, you know, it doesn't say either way. But either way, Abraham got rich off of it and Pharaoh got a plague off of it. So it wasn't a good deal for the Egyptians. All right? But anyway, this one doesn't say specifically. The next one does. I did not touch your wife. So anyway, we don't know what happened here. I'm not going to try to infer anything in it. But other than the fact that there was a plague, and so possibly something did happen between Pharaoh and Sarai. Anyway, verse 13. Anybody? 13:1.
So Abram went up from Egypt to the Negev with his wife and everything he had, and Lot went with him. Abram had become very wealthy in livestock and in silver and gold. Okay,
so he'd acquired all kinds of stuff up in the land of Haran, and which is Mesopotamia, and then he came down, probably got a little richer in here until the famine, went down to Egypt, got even richer, comes back into the land of Israel. He's headed toward the Negev, and livestock, silver, and gold. Okay. Anyway, go ahead. Verse 3.
From the Negev he went from place to place until he came to Bethel, to the place between Bethel and Ai, where his tent had been earlier, and where he had first built an altar. There Abram called on the name of the Lord. Okay,
now I've probably missed enough to talk about for a month in here. You know, I've never really done a study on this particular thing, but if you read Jewish commentaries, they'll have probably pages and pages and pages on every single sentence that we've just read, and we're going through it really quickly. So I apologize, but anyway, interesting. It's even if we don't get into any deep theological issues on this, it's still a fun read. Genesis is just a fun read from beginning to end. And to me, this isn't the kind of thing that I study because I like the numbers and I like all the details and things. And this one, you know, it's kind of more of a narrative. So we'll just go on from there. All right, go ahead.
Did I finish through 4?
You finished up through, you finished up through 4. Now, before you go on, this is like the account, all of this stuff going on here, this is like the account of Noah. Remember I said you can write sermons all day long on Noah. It's the same thing with Abraham. Every sentence you can write a sermon on. But as far as, you know, a study, it's a little different. Some things are much better for study and some things are better for sermons. And when they match, then you've got a really great verse. But anyway, this one here, you can do all kinds of sermons on, you know, Abraham's faithlessness or God's faithfulness, or you just go on all day. But, and that's why people like to use verses like this. But anyway, go ahead, verse 5.
I'm still stuck back on Pharaoh. You know, the Lord inflicted serious diseases, and what have you done to me? Why didn't you tell me?
Right.
Who finally told Pharaoh.
Yeah, well, you know what? It could be. We don't know, but it could be that, you know, you'll see diviners throughout the Bible that will inquire of God, and it could be that they found out through a diviner. You know, who knows? But one way or another, he knew something was wrong. Like in the Jonah. You know, they're about to throw Jonah over the ship, and they're all calling on their gods, looking, why is this calamity coming on us? And finally, Jonah comes up and it says it's because of me. But at other times, a diviner will find something out, like the witch at Endor when Saul went to inquire of him. Balaam, whatever his name is. These are people that are not in the covenant community, and yet they can understand things through dreams or visions or whatever. But it could be just because of the plague that he realized something is going on, went to his council of people, the same people that would have counseled the later Pharaoh at the time of Joseph, but somehow they figured it out. You know, it doesn't say, so we can't, you know, we can't insert anything into there, but we can kind of think through how would this happen. So, yeah, gossip. Yeah, exactly. Here, you know, this guy's getting rich, and yeah, like the son. What is it? Isaac. When he did the same thing and somebody saw him looking, I think the king himself looked out the window and saw him and says, nobody touch this guy. But anyway, yeah. But like father, like son. There you all right.
Now Lot, who was moving about with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, but the land could not support them while they stayed together. For their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together.
Now that's got to be a pretty big amount of stuff if they've got that much, you know. And like it says, they've got people. Once you have people, then you have people that can work. The people that work make more money, and so they're obviously very well to do. But okay, go ahead.
And quarrel arose between Abram's herdsmen and the herdsmen of Lot. The Canaanites and the Perizzites were also living in the land.
Okay, we have quarreling between the two camps of the people. Now, not that we don't want to get too much into sermon-type material, but doesn't that happen in churches all the time? You know what I mean? Or you have two churches and they're both really prosperous and they end up fighting over each other or fighting over territory, or, you know, it really fits in there. Like I said, you can write sermons all day off of this kind of stuff. I mean, it's not something we want to teach in a class, but if you just think through the possibilities of what's going on between these people, these are actually people within their camps. And then it makes a note that there are also Perizzites and Canaanites in the land, or whoever, Canaanites and Perizzites. But anyway, the strife is between Abram's servants or whatever and the herdsmen of Lot. So, okay, verse 8.
So Abram said to Lot, let's not have any quarreling between you and me, or between your herdsmen and mine, for we are brothers.
Okay, why would he say between you and me? Who was it that was quarreling?
The herdsmen.
Okay, what is eventually going to happen?
Well, they're going to take up for their own.
That's right. And Abraham is a wise guy in this. He wasn't very wise with his wife, but he's very wise here. That eventually it's going to cause strife between him and Lot. Okay? Like I said, if you got two churches that are pretty like-minded, you know, we're never going to quarrel with the Catholics unless it becomes a, you know, parking issue or something. But as far as theology, we're so different than them, we're not going to argue. But if you had another Baptist church here, we may end up starting to quarrel over it. Who knows? But that's what's happening here, is that Abram is wise enough to understand that the people in the congregation are going to lead to a quarreling between family members. So, okay, go ahead.
Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I will go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left.
Okay, so real magnanimous again. He knows there's a problem, and instead of saying, I'm going to take this, he just says, you choose, and wherever you go, I'll go the opposite direction. Okay, good man, Abraham.
So Lot looked up and saw that the whole plain of Jordan was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt toward Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah.
Okay, so we already are told in advance that it's coming. So if you've read this for the first time, you wouldn't, what are they talking about, you know? Must have been destroyed before. We just know that it's written later, so this is for the benefit of the reader. Okay, when you see things like that, you know that it is for the benefit of the reader because it hasn't even happened yet. But you know the land of Israel. Let me erase some of this stuff here, and then real quickly, I'm sure that most of you have seen this, but if you haven't, we'll just give you real quickly what Israel kind of looks like. And I'm not trying to say this is exact, but you've got Israel kind of shaped like this and whatever. And then the Jordan River runs down here, goes into the Sea of Galilee, which is called Kinneret in Hebrew. Does anybody know what Kinneret is very similar to? Where the name came from? It's very similar to the word kinnor, which is a harp, because it's kind of shaped like a harp, just so you know. Anyway, then it goes on down here, and we come to the Dead Sea, and from there the water just evaporates. But apparently this, I got to tell you, this is some barren land. Jerusalem is up here, and you go down here, and it's like being in a different world. It is. You go there and you think, why would anybody on earth want to be in this area? It's just so barren. But now they're planting palm trees there and figs, and it's amazing. But anyway, this water, you may have heard of the parallel that the water goes through here. This is alive. It flows back out, but the water flows in here, and it's dead. And you might have read that story written by that one lady that says that, this is kind of like a picture of us. When we receive something, we pass it on. It serves a purpose, but if we just hoard everything in, eventually we just wither up and die. Okay, it's kind of like, but anyway, it's kind of a picture of that. But, so this is where all that's going on. Jerusalem's over here, real barren place, but at the time apparently it was all real well watered and, just different. Okay, go ahead and read the next one.
So Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out toward the east. The two men parted company. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tents near Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked and were sinning greatly against the Lord. Okay, before we go on, have you ever heard any of these liberal commentators say that the sin of Lot was not specifically homosexual? Have you heard anybody say that? Because they want to justify that it's okay to be homosexual. And have you read any of that? Because I have read that, where people say, it's not specific. Sure, that's what happened, is some of the people wanted to, have sex with the men and all that, but that's not specifically the reason. Well, guess what? The New Testament clarifies that. If you have these things in the Old Testament that people argue over, and it's mentioned in the New Testament, go to the New Testament, because it will clarify these arguments that people make. Like, let's say, in Hebrew, the word for innkeeper, which Rahab was, can mean, harlot can also mean just an innkeeper. Have you heard that one? Yeah. Okay, how do we know that she was a harlot?
It says so in Scripture.
Says it so in the New Testament. Forget the Old. If the Old is ambiguous, the New takes care of it. It's like the word for virgin in Isaiah 7:14. You've probably heard this one, where it says, behold, the virgin shall conceive and, bear a child, and you shall call his name Emmanuel. And the word can mean, in Hebrew, a young maiden. It doesn't specifically mean a virgin. Well, guess what? When they translated it into the Greek, the Old Testament, the Septuagint, which predates Jesus, they use the word parthenos. They use the word virgin in Greek, and it doesn't mean anything else. And guess what Matthew uses in the New Testament when he cites that verse? He uses the word parthenos. There's no doubt, but people love to go back into these passages, and they love to try to diminish it because they think people are so stupid that they can't turn a few more chapters forward and see that the New Testament will clarify anything that the difficult Hebrew passage, if it is something of that importance, God has taken care of it. Believe me. The New Catholic Bible that just came out apparently translates it young woman instead of virgin in Isaiah 7:14. Okay, technically that's correct, but applicationally it is incorrect. Okay, just so you know, these are the things that we need to be careful about when we get excited about people that claim to know what they're talking about. Oh, well, the Hebrew could mean. It doesn't matter what the Hebrew could mean because the Greek is very clear and the Greek is citing the Hebrew. So, okay. Well, I know, and you know what? They could say the New Testament stands alone, and we're just trying to be more accurate in our translation of the Old Testament. For whatever reason, they did that. I have no idea what their thinking was, but we should let the New Testament drive our theology. That's what we should do, because the New Testament is the fulfillment of that passage.